Hey y'all, what's up? It's Kellen with K&T Do Halloween. In this video, I'm going to show you how we took our clown shoes from bozo to killer. So let's go. First thing I'm doing is going in with a leather roughing rasp. It's a tool used to rough up leather, has a bunch of pointy needles on the end, and then I'm going back in with some sandpaper to rough up all of the pleather on the outside of the shoes. I always like to add texture to the base of the item that I'm working on before I paint it, because that makes detailing it much easier, because you're just enhancing texture that you've already distressed into the item before you've begun to paint it, which always works out really well in the end. Hunting around for real clown shoes online, we found out very quickly that they are insanely expensive. I managed to find these ones on a website for about $65 a piece. But I'm not going to post the website below because let's just say they sold shoes for other adult jobs. These two pairs are for two original costumes that we've created for Halloween this year. The characters are named Trick and Treat, and you can check out our Dark Creations ATX video with the clown costumes that we purchased, and it'll make a little bit more sense with the color palette that we're using later on. Once I'm done distressing, I'm using 90% alcohol and wiping down the surface of each shoe just to make it clean for the spray paint to bond to. I'm also touching up the froggy tape that's around the edges to protect my soles. Next, I'm moving on to painting. I'm using flat black spray paint. I started with all of the tongues, and then I'll be basing out the sides of each shoe. Yep, I wear socks with sandals. Don't care. I'm now moving on to the orange pair of shoes. I'm using two different colors of orange spray paint, holding the can fairly far away from the pair of shoes and gently layering it on and building up some depth to each pair of shoes. The other pair of shoes will be black, so I'm actually using a dark brown spray paint to layer onto that shoe. And you'll see I continue to layer and layer and layer, and as I continue to layer with black spray paint and orange spray paint on top of each shoe, I'm building up more depth, and it's a great way to correct any areas that you go too light or too dark. Moving on now to some socks and some gloves. I just wanted to paint these since I really didn't want to spend too much time on them, and I have the spray paint drop cloth out. I'm just layering some yellow on for some sweat stains, along with some black and some brown, just for some grime to help break up the lightness of the gloves, and also the pattern that's on the socks. And this step is done. I think they actually look really great at this point. You could leave them here if you wanted to, but you know, of course, that's not how I work. I'm pretty extra, and I had to always take it a bit further, so here we go. Now the fun part, all the detailing. First, I'm going to start by peeling off all of my painter's tape. Here's a little peel porn for any of y'all who are into that sort of stuff. I'm not into ASMR, but that sound is insane. Just painter's tape being peeled off of the base of a shoe. Crazy. But we're not about that on this channel, so let's move along. Now I'm using brown latex acrylic caulk with silicone and literally dirt and grass from my yard and a chip brush to add some mud and some grime to the base of the shoes. This was a suggestion from Alan at Stiltby Studios, and it actually worked out amazingly well. I just continued to build up the shoes by dabbing the paintbrush into the caulk, and it turned out awesome. Moving on to making some of the accessory pieces, I'm using thin wire and some craft paint to make some sprinkles. I stuck the wire into the foam so I could paint them and let them dry, and then I'll cut them up into sprinkle sizes later. Now I'm using some clay foam to create some pieces of chewing gum so those can dry and I can paint them later before I apply them to the shoe. I'm also distressing some dum-dum wrappers and lacing the shoes up with some laces that I distressed with some spray paint. Now using a hot glue gun, I'm just adding the dum-dum wrappers as well as the pieces of cotton candy that were made out of stuffing and then hit with some spray paint. The wires have dried, so now I'm cutting up the wires to make my sprinkles. I didn't want to use real sprinkles because I knew that they would likely dissolve in the resin and permablood that I was using, but I had never used this technique before and I was actually pretty pleased with how it turned out. They came out perfect, like little wire sprinkles. Definitely don't recommend eating them though. Now I'm just going through and hand placing them. Placement is a matter of preference. I wanted it to be subtle to where you had to look in and really see the detail. Moving on to the black pair of shoes, I'm mixing up about 1 ounce of resin. I'm working it right to the 2-minute working time. That way it's pretty thick when I pour it. I'm also stirring it quite a bit to make it foamy and white as opposed to a clearer resin. Once that's set up, I'm going to start painting my foam bubblegum. I wanted this to be pretty distinctively bubblegum, so I didn't want to stray too far with the flavors or with the colors. Pink, green, and blue. I just slowly built up the colors on all the different pieces with an airbrush, spinning it around on a paper plate until I was happy with the results. This was kind of fun. Creating fake candy was something that I never thought that I would do, and I actually really enjoyed it. I'm pretty pleased with how they turned out. Now that they've dried, I'm just using some hot glue to attach them. This is all a matter of preference. I wanted them to look like somebody helped me apply the pieces of gum with their face as I was chasing them down, trying to scare the life out of them, but that's maybe just my backstory. I wanted to attach them to the front. You really want to avoid attaching pieces like this to the sides or high flex areas because they're likely to just fall off. I want to slow it down for a second just to show you my technique for adding viscera or hairy bits or chunks to your blood, whether it's on the end of a tooth or embedded in a pool of blood or on the bottom of a shoe. It's a fun technique that I use and I'm sure other people use it as well. I dumped a little bit of permablood into just a small cup for ease and so I don't make a mess. And then I'm reaching over the table and I'm actually grabbing dryer lint. I don't know how your house is, but our dryer is pretty fruitful because we have pets, as well as I'm a hairstylist, and we have lots of towels in the house. So I usually just pull out the dryer lint and set it aside in a Tupperware container. I'm now just pulling out little chunks. It's hard to see in the video, but they have lots of hair and fibers and pieces in them. I'm now just grabbing a paintbrush, and I'm going to use these to add some chunks to the side of the shoe. You can see up by the shoelaces there's already a piece that has dried and it looks pretty great. I'm just grabbing some permablood, dabbing it onto the surface because permablood does have some adhesive qualities to it and kind of acts like a glue, and I want to make sure there's some behind the piece. I'm now adding some permablood to the cardboard and picking up the piece of lint from the dryer and just covering it in permablood. I'm swishing it around, making sure that it's fully saturated. You don't really want to see the actual fibers. Ours happen to be white and blue just because of what we washed. And then I'm picking it up with the paintbrush and applying it to the item where I want the chunk of viscera to be. Just pressing it into place with my paintbrush. And then I'm going to go back and actually pick up some more permablood just to help secure it in place and add a little bit more shine on the top. And these are really effective. They look pretty gnarly in person, and I actually added these chunks of lint to the edges of the teeth as well that are in the cotton candy as well as the gum that are on my shoe. I really like how this effect looks, and you can tell because I use it over all of our props and really anywhere that I add blood. I just like to see the chunks in there because it makes me happy. I'm now going through with some white paint and just dry brushing over all of the texture on the shoe. I know it looks a little weird in bright light, but at night it'll look fantastic, and the white highlight will actually catch all of that awesome muddy texture that I placed on the bottom of the shoes, as well as add another layer of dimension to the paint job. I'm now going back through with a tiny paintbrush and just touching up any areas that I think are wonky. And here you have it. So spooky! And here's the final results. We are so happy with how these clown shoes turned out. They started out at Bozo the Clown, and they definitely are worthy of some killer clown nightmare fuel. We cannot wait to add these to the rest of our costume and are so excited to show you guys the finished product later on in the season. These turned out fantastic and add a whole new layer of gross detail to some already awesome costumes from Dark Creations ATX. Thank y'all so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button below. It lets us know you enjoy the content that we're creating. And of course, if you like videos like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button. That way you don't miss any of the awesome videos that we upload weekly. Thank you guys again so much for checking out this video. We really appreciate the support. We loved creating these clown shoes, and we hope you guys enjoyed watching the creation and learned a little bit as well. Now remember, if you create it, they will come. Stay safe, everyone.